welcome to Directionally Correct, a Felix podcast with Cole and Scott. Today's guest, nobody.
There you go.
There we go.
I love it.
Thanks to our sponsors, Pollinode. Harness the full power of organizational network analysis with Pollinode. With one-click data integrations and built-in relationship-based surveys, Pollinode enables people analytics practitioners to move from data to insights faster. To learn more and see why Pollinode is trusted by some of the most innovative companies in the world today, book a demo at pollinode.com/directionallycorrect.
How do you ease into a podcast? That's a question I have yet to answer.
Well, I mean, I think that you and I have better perspective on this than anybody out there because there's no one to really ask, right? And
No.
we can ask each other and we get each
Mhm.
other's opinion, but it's not easy, right? It's not easy to like force conversation and try and guide it, etc.
Well, that's kind of my first rule is it a conversation or is it an interview? And if it's an interview, it's not fun, generally speaking. But if it's a conversation, it has the possibility for fun.
I mean, like I strive for us to get more conversational, but it's tough. It's tough.
It is. Everybody when that little red light goes on.
Yeah, it's like Hal from 2001: Space Odyssey.
I actually watched that for the first time not that long ago.
Really,
I'd
what'd you
never
think?
seen it. I've heard like all the cultural references, never seen it. And then I watched it. I was like, wow, this movie is way freakier than I thought it would be. Like the monolith and all that.
Oh, at the very beginning and end. It's been
Yeah,
like
well, I think
10
there's
years
a
of this.
really trippy, like 20-minute section at the end where it's just like going through, like it looks like a lava lamp most of the time.
Yeah.
It's a very crazy, trippy movie. I was like, wow, they used to do wild stuff in movies back in the day.
Oh, that's Stanley Kubrick, man.
Yeah.
I don't think there's dialogue for the first like 40 minutes or something like that. 2000.
Yeah. It's like, talk about what you can't get away with in 2023.
Sorry, I'm trying to Google it real quick, see if I can figure it out. But yeah, there's no dialogue until they break into like ostensibly modern times.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of it's just like setup shots. So like the guy on the space station, like running, like that's how he's getting his exercise, and the other guy eating his little like protein meal in the TV tray, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's very bizarre. It's just a very bizarre movie. I liked it though. I was like, I wish they made more movies like this, you know?
I mean, that would be relegated to like art house sort of stuff, right?
I guess. I feel like there was a time where popular movies could also kind of stretch boundaries. Now it's like another superhero movie. Great.
Or like, let's take a TV show from the 80s or 90s and turn it into a movie with or reimagine it, which is not good either.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't really get these sort of creative movies, and when they like hit.
Well, I mean, in my mind, like the movie industry is over. It just doesn't know it yet, you know?
How so?
Well, it's like, I mean, I guess like Napoleon is out right now. There was Oppenheimer, there was Barbie, but there's just not the level of blockbusters that keep the whole industry afloat like they used to have, you know?
So like two thoughts here. How did that come about? Like where we don't have Space Odyssey 2001? Is it because you got so much corporate? As soon as you get bureaucracy, that's the antithesis of creativity, right?
Yeah.
This is people trying to cover their ass and like understand exactly what the customer wants and all this sort of stuff at the expense of, hey, let's make something great that's really compelling.
Well, I think it went from, to use a metaphor, from like a venture capital model to like a regular investment model. Meaning there was a point in time where you would make like big bets and sometimes they pay off and sometimes they wouldn't. And so you lose money, but you also make up for it with these huge hits like, you know, Star Wars or something, like the originals. Whereas now they're wanting to just like get a stable return on these movies. And the only way you can get stable returns is with known commodities. You can't ever take a risk. right?
I think that's fair. So like take something like the Blair Witch Project. It was made for like $100,000, and let's say on the back end it made $10 million. So net profit
Yeah.
$9.9 million. Great. Or you could make Thor for $300 million, and it makes $400 million. Net profit $100 million, despite the fact that you spent way more money creating it.
Yeah. I think it's not about the profit. I think it's about the risk taking. I think they just don't want to have the risk of potentially losing money. It's kind of like the whole like behavioral economics, loss aversion. People would rather, make less money but not have the chance to lose money than make more money and have a chance to lose, which again is kind of the venture capital model.
I think that I mean, we've had a million discussions about, you know, AI or generative AI. I think
Mhm.
that we're going to reach a period where, I mean, it's already right now where someone will tell me about a TV show, and I'm like, I don't know. There's 4,000 TV shows you're telling me about, and I can't keep up with all of them. But I think there's going to be a time where you're going to have personalized TV shows and movies for you based on what you enjoy, and it won't be relevant to Cole because it's only relevant to Scott.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up because I've been thinking about this concept lately. It's like there's like a trend in society where you went from, I don't know, like in 1950 there's 3 television channels and everybody sees the same stuff,
Yes.
to ultimate personalization. So it's complete conformity to complete uniformity. Or did I say that backwards?
I got you.
Yeah. And it made me think of the movie. Or did you ever see the show on HBO Westworld?
Oh, I loved Westworld.
Yeah.
I love the
And like in
original
the
movie too. It's great.
Yeah. When the in the first season of Westworld, it's like everybody shows up to this metaphorical universe of what it was like in the old Wild West, but you got to choose your own adventure. So no two people had the same experiences at this theme park. You want to go kill a guy, go kill a guy.
Hmm.
You want to go do some lewd behavior, go do some lewd behavior. But it really, and if you wanted it to be very like family friendly, it's family friendly. But if you wanted to be extremely X rated, it's extremely X rated. And so I feel like that's what's going to happen to all aspects of our life. It's like there's going to be there's going to be no experiences where we all have a common understanding of each other anymore.
I mean that's the point that I was essentially getting at. I
Yeah.
like this idea though, but because that social experience is partly why you would watch, say, The Office, because you
Yeah,
can go talk to your friend about it. And wasn't Michael
exactly.
Scott really funny the other day? If we're all like segmented into our own reality, which we already kind of are,
You already kind of are.
you lose that sort of social cohesion with other folks and relatedness.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I've been going down this rabbit hole lately, and it makes me realize this fact of like about like all the UFO stuff. Have you been
Wait,
paying
what?
attention? There,
No.
exactly. It's like if you ask like 8 out of 10 people walking down the street, have they heard like what's going on with all this UFO stuff? They would have no clue. But there was like all these congressional testimonies about like maybe like UFOs are real, maybe the government has them in their possession. And I've been going deep down this rabbit hole. But the thing
This
is,
from like
it's not
Roswell in
generalizable.
1945 or
They're
whatever.
actually speculating that the government has had crash UFOs ever since Roswell. It's very like again, I'm very deep into this right now. It is it's fascinating to me.
I
But
love
here's the thing.
conspiracy theory, Cole. This is great.
But it's not a conspiracy theory. It was literally testifying before Congress. Like these are real things that are really on the news. But the thing, my point is not about UFOs. It's about fragmentation. Is there was a point in time where if there was a bombshell testimony in front of Congress, everybody in America would have heard about it.
Yeah, of
Whereas
course.
right now, it's only if you have interest in this space that you've heard about it. And so you can talk to a person off the street and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, we're about to find out the truth, man. Capital T UFOs are real, man." And then other people are like, "What are you talking about?" And so it's a very interesting phenomena.
Yeah, I mean, like when our parents were, middle age or what have you, Walter Cronkite was the voice of the nation. That he would deliver the news, and everyone essentially had that same,
Hmm.
source of information. But to your point, now with social media, everyone's algorithm treats them differently. So quite literally, the people on the left and the people on the right can't talk to each other
Yeah.
because they get different news. And also, to your point, the news becomes so fragmented, it'd be hard to develop any sort of like uprising or, cohesion around the
Yeah.
truth because
Just like
it doesn't
cohesion of
relate
like,
to everybody. Yeah.
yeah, general sense of what's going on. Like, what are the facts? What's happening? It's tough to find. I don't know.
I mean, Stanley Kubrick, he was also the one that everyone thinks that faked the moon landing. So, I mean, we're coming kind of full circle here.
Maybe. I don't know. I
Have
don't
you ever
know much
seen
about
that?
that.
It's wild. Like The Shining. He directed The Shining, Stephen King novel, and there's all sorts of great. There's a movie called Room 272 that breaks down
Mhm.
all the conspiracy theories in that movie. It's fantastic. But there's a scene where I think his name is Bobby. I can't remember, but he's like playing with toys on the carpet, and The Shining starts happening, or like it's
Mhm.
like the creepy music anyway. And he's got a rocket ship. Sweater on, and he stands up, and everyone's like, "Okay, that means that Kubrick's telling the world that he actually directed the falsified the moon landing, and this is
That's
him trying
wild.
to explain to the world."
I'll be honest, I've never seen The Shining. It's another one of those movies where I've only seen it the pop culture on like Family Guy or something, but I've never actually seen the real thing.
Number one all time, best movie ever.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay. Well, maybe in 20 years, like Stanley Kubrick's movie, I'll see, or like
yeah,
the
yeah.
2001, I'll see it.
In fairness, I think that came out like in 1969, so you got a little ways.
Got a little ways. Okay, that's good. Well, hey, we made it another 6 months, so congratulations.
Did
Well
we?
done. Yeah,
Wow, white knuckling it.
white knuckling it. We barely made it by, but I was curious if you wanted to do a look back on some of your favorite moments over the last 6 months. Any guests? Any things you wish we would have talked about but didn't, or any special moments? Anything funny? I don't know.
No,
Let's
not
hear it
really.
all.
I'm good. I can
Okay,
move on.
cool.
No, I kid, of course. I kid, of
All right.
course. No, boy, it's amazing. Like to think about like all the people we've talked to. Yeah, some of the highlights for me was like Doug Shagam, the Campions. They were great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fred Oswalt. Like I've only talked to him like once or twice at conferences, but like he was a ton of fun.
Yeah. Dude, he was fantastic. I will say he did. I think he's just outside the window the last 6 months, but still, I'd love to give him a shout too. And
Who's
I don't know.
that?
Did you have a favorite or Fred Oswald? I think
Fred.
he was. Yeah.
Oh man, they're all my babes. Like how can you pick one over the other?
Well, I definitely liked them all. I would say I actually thought Doug was probably my favorite. I think he might be the most likable guy on earth. like,
I
I like he's just so nice, and I'm like, okay. And it was very informative too. He's clearly a very intelligent guy. I was like, man, this is fantastic. So I
I,
really
I
enjoyed that one.
I took two things away from the Doug conversation. Like, well, three things. Like, yes, he is like just a lovable, nice guy. But one thing is, he said that he would teach me the double bass drum pedal, which
Yeah,
which feels like insane. And two, I just love the idea of him like sneaking onto the golf course in the middle of the night to get a few holes in.
yeah. I mean, it's crazy to go on the golf course in the middle of the night. Like, it's like, and I think he's in Florida. Is like an alligator gonna get you? I mean, come on. Like, come on. Well, I'll say this: some folks, there were some other interesting moments. Like, I feel like Nicole Lettich. I learned a lot, like a lot of new concepts from her that I wasn't familiar with, but I thought that was really cool. The other
Yeah,
two other people that I thought I was kind of kicking myself. I wish we could have had them on later. Was both Guru and Charles Handler once the President Biden's AI order came out and the European order that came out recently too. I would love to have people with that background on to kind of explain what's going on and what are the pros and cons and all of that. That would have been fantastic as well.
well, I mean, like, I don't think that there's any rule against us having the people back on again because this is going to
Oh
come
yeah.
up more and more frequently, right? Like,
Yeah.
as people figure out what even generative AI is, and much less how to wrangle it or how to
Yeah.
use it. We're going to need more of these sort of conversations.
Well, it's fantastic to have people on like the Campions you mentioned, like really premier researchers, and then the Paul Sackett one. I mean, goodness gracious, he's doing some of the most impactful research that's going on out there. And then, cool people like Dan George. Dan was awesome. I thought he was a fun guest. So, yeah, I think we just had a
Absolutely.
really great slate of people.
So like Paul Sackett, like I think that he has stumbled upon something really insightful, i.e., that the previous study. Why am I freaking blanking here?
Schmidt and Hunter.
Schmidt and Hunter, they did not use corrections appropriately. So he identified a method to better correct that data. I'm still not convinced that cognitive ability doesn't work for knowledge jobs. I think it's going to be like wildly predictive. It's right there in the title, knowledge job.
Oh, we're coming back to that later in this episode. I've got a treat for you that I think you'll
Oh,
appreciate.
okay.
So I'm glad you teed that up because
I.e., like Cole and I haven't talked about any of this. If it doesn't show.
The Cole and Scott episodes, they're the best because they truly are completely improvisational. Like we have a very loose understanding of what either of us are bringing to the table.
Yeah, I mean, just a ton of actual great guests, and I know that you've secured most of these. Like, super thankful to you
Oh, come on,
for
man!
grabbing these people.
It's a team effort. Like Alec Levinson always says, people analytics is a team sport. So I think this podcast wouldn't be what it is without both of us and the amazing guests that we brought on. But I think I've said this before, and I don't mind saying it again. The Cole and Scott episodes are my favorite. They're fun.
Oh, absolutely. But we are coming up on 2024.
Yeah, when this thing comes out, it'll actually be 2024. Actually,
man, living in the future, just like Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah, wild movie. Well, do you
2001.
have any? I know last year we had kind of put out some New Year's resolutions of what we were thinking about for the upcoming year. Do you have any New Year's resolutions for this upcoming year?
Well, I mean, that's where I was coming to right there. Like, what is it actually? What do we want to get out of 2024? It feels like so much of life is just kind of like a flow. You kind of get sucked into like the stream and just kind of like carried along. So
inertia.
Yeah. So one, I'd like to prioritize the work that I want to take care of. I get asked to do so many different things, but I want to follow the energy. Like, where is the energy taking me? What brings me joy and that sort of thing? Which leads me to like point two. Like, there's been several projects, largely creative projects, that I've been thinking about for anywhere from 5 to 10 years, and I haven't made any progress on them whatsoever. Like, even just like a small, like 30 minutes, just do a little bit, make some sort of headway would go a long way. So I'm going to start trying to get into the sort of things that bring me joy. That's my 2024 plan. What about you, dude?
We're going to have some eddies in the flow of the river. I love that.
Eddies in the flow.
Yeah.
Actually, more like build my own canal. That's what I want to do. I'm going to
there you go.
Like a channel off to the side.
Well, do you have any like of these ideas you would want to pursue for like 5 or 10 years that you'd be willing to share?
I like already shared one on the pod with one of our guests. I can't remember when, but essentially create a Harry Potter style portrait in my house. So essentially record people, have them sit there for 5 to 10 minutes, look around, this sort of thing. Put it on I'm thinking like a Raspberry Pi right now, buy a monitor, put a little frame around it, just have it on a loop. Raspberry Pi draws almost no power whatsoever. And it'd be like a fun like conversation piece.
That would be. So I have to go a layer deeper here because I think it's an awesome idea. Who are the people going to be? That's the big question. Like, is it going to be me? Like, am I going to be on your wall, or who is it going to be? Strangers? Like, who is it?
Well, it wouldn't be strangers. I mean, like trying to talk a stranger into sitting there for 5 minutes would be a heavy task.
I think you could do that in Seattle. I think they'd do it.
Shit, you don't know the people here. They're cold as ice. My God, people here are cold. No, like close friends and family. We'll see if you make the cut. We'll
See
see.
if I make the cut. All right. They'll
See
give
if
me
you make
something
the
to
cut.
aspire to. That'll be my New Year's resolutions to make the cut. Yeah.
You'll start calling me Scotty,
Yeah.
like the close people in the inner circle.
Maybe. Or I don't know. I don't know if I'm willing to make that sacrifice.
But I have a couple other projects, but I won't bore people with those sort of things. But I do love the idea of a Harry Potter style painting. Maybe you can even like layer over some sort of like effects, so it actually
Yeah.
does look like a painting.
That's a
But
fantastic idea.
what about you, bud?
Yeah. I've been thinking about like so 2 years ago, I just think it's really silly to do New Year's resolutions that you don't keep. Like, oh, I'm gonna lose 15 pounds this year, and then it doesn't happen, right? Or you give up in like January or something at the end of January. And so, like 2 years ago, I did the kind of getting my name out there
Yeah,
and really kind of stuck with it, to this day. Last year, I said I wanted to kind of decrease the delta between my public self and my private self. And I really like, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but I really tried to lean into that more on the pod this past year of like, in the past, I'm like, I always want to sound smart. I always want to like, be the guy like that's never vulnerable or anything like that. And I've really tried to, I don't know, try to lean into that a little bit more and made some progress in that area. And so kind of within that vein, one of the things I've been thinking about lately is like keeping my ego in check and like, in your career, one of the things that's it's always been important to me is like getting credit for doing good work. And I think one of my New Year's resolutions for this year is to not ever worry about taking credit for things and giving credit very generously to others. And I think that like on the personal front, also kind of related, I made this LinkedIn post not that long ago about doing personal coaching for other folks in the people analytics space. And I'm pretty excited. I'm probably going to be coaching a few folks this next year on doing people analytics more effectively and hopefully, making some other folks shine. And so I don't know. I'm just kind of excited about that as a New Year's resolution for this coming year. And again, hopefully I can stick with it.
so you're gonna take credit for the coaching of people by not taking
No,
credit for,
I
for
want them
coaching.
to, I want them to shine.
Tell me more about that. As far as like taking credit, because I have an orientation to it. But
Yeah.
what do you mean? Like,
Well, like I find this. You've heard me rant privately, but also we've talked about a little bit on the podcast of my disdain for performance reviews and that type of thing.
yeah,
But one of the things when you're working in like a corporate environment and you're trying to work your way up the ladder, you want to get ahead in the world. Is like I put into my mind how I had to like shine on a lot of things so I could get credit for them later on my performance review. So then I could get a bonus or a raise or a promotion or whatever it may
yeah.
be. And so it was like the performance reviewization of my life. And I feel like that was like becoming like malware in my personality, where instead of being a cool guy, being collaborative, being, like, I actually don't think I'm a person with a really high ego, but it was making me be like an arrogant, high ego type person in the workplace. Cause I'm always like, I gotta do good. And like, I just don't think that that's serving me well in the long run. And so how can I, actively take a stance to kind of
Well, like
counter?
you're always like looking at the scoreboard and see how many points you've put up, that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. When I think that's why those kind of systems exist is because they want to
Yeah.
incentivize people to look at the scoreboard so that they perform better. And it's like, well, what if that's a short term versus long term problem where maybe it helps me in the short term, but it actually hurts me in the long run? And maybe I should take a more long term orientation. And I think this is kind of my viewpoint on it.
I think it's super admirable to do that sort of like self reflection. Not many people have that sort of self awareness to understand, or like just like think back about like how they react to situations, this sort of thing.
Yeah.
As far as like getting credit, my orientation is I have a very collectivistic sort of outlook on life. Like I'm
Mhm.
definitely good to help everyone out and that sort of thing. And I don't necessarily need to get credit for things, but I'll be damned if someone else is going to get credit for what I did. Fuck that. Fuck
Yeah.
that. Uh, I was at a party the other day and like I told someone a joke and then like they told that same joke to other people. They were laughing. It's like, oh no, you don't get to fucking steal my joke and just like pass it off as your own.
Well, I actually, I think that's funny, first of all. But I've been thinking about like, what if like this is pretty what I'm about to say is pretty radical, and I'm not saying that I'm gonna fully live up to this standard, but like, what if only other people got credit for my actions and I never did? And that could be like a really powerful way of keeping my ego in check. Like, what if only other people got credit for those jokes? Again, I
Yeah.
don't know if that's necessarily even reasonable, but that's kind of this mental model I'm playing with in my mind. Is like, wouldn't that be a really kind of interesting way of being in the moment?
It's very giving. It also goes against what you were saying earlier about like how do you get ahead? Like you got to show some sort of score on the scoreboard.
Exactly.
I
And
find I find myself like being like I really get annoyed. I think of myself as creative. I have a lot of
Mhm.
creative thoughts, and I run across a ton of people that have no creative wherewithal whatsoever. They never had a creative idea in their life.
Yep.
That's what gets me. Like if I come up with something creative and they try and take credit for that, like no way.
Oh, I
No
totally
way.
understand. I felt the same way, Um, yeah, it's definitely it's taxing if, especially if it really benefits them kind of at your
Yeah.
expense or something, but I don't know.
It's like the
That
mansplaining of taking credit sort of orientation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
I'm
I
over
said
here
it, but I
mentioning.
said it with like a little arm motion. And therefore everyone like, oh yeah, so smart over there.
I had more onomatopoeias involved. I
What? Oh, what's that? Is that a word that sounds like another word? Boy, I haven't heard
thought that was a
automatopoeia.
word that was like bam or splat.
Is that what
There's
that
a
is?
I can't remember. Maybe I'm using that
Auto.
incorrectly.
Oh man, where's spell
Oh
check
well,
when you
this is
need
me
it?
being vulnerable.
Automatopoeia. Oh boy. The naming of a thing or action by vocal imitation of the sound associated with it. You're right. Buzz, hiss.
Yeah. See? There you go.
Look at you. Check out the big brain on Cole.
I give you credit for all of it, man.
You get there's nothing creative there.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been so positive in this past like 5-10 minutes here. But
You want to be negative?
I want to be negative. I want to
Let's
be
balance
negative.
this out. Let's keep some harmony.
What? Give me like your 3 annoyances. It doesn't have to be related to Christmas time or 2024 in general. But like, what are 3 things that annoy you in people?
So I came up with like 20.
I love this. I love this.
I started doing like a factor analysis of all them.
But
Like,
you
what
got
are
to
the
group them. You got to group them
Yeah.
together. Yeah.
And so like one of them was what I would call just like lacking common courtesy, right?
Okay.
So like you text somebody, they don't text back, or they cancel a meeting last minute, but they don't like email you why, and then like just like little basic things that it's like all it would take was 5 seconds, just be nice and treat me like a human being.
I think those
And
things are eroding too in
yeah,
society.
exactly. And then sort of similarly, like a lot of my pet peeves fall within like this kind of vein of like people thinking their time is more important than
Yeah,
mine. Right. Like
absolutely.
they're just like, oh yeah, we need to move this because of my schedule. I don't mind doing that like once, maybe even twice. But if we have to move every time we connect because of your schedule, it's like we're not you just
You're
think
not
that we're not
prioritizing
equal.
me.
And I think that kind of fits into the last point, which is like any kind of behavior that treats human beings as fundamentally there's like unnecessary hierarchies. I don't necessarily have a problem with hierarchies, but like if you create a hierarchy where it doesn't need to exist, where we really are just peers or we really are just equals, and you're treating it like we're not equals, that really grinds my gears.
Give me an example of that. I don't fully understand.
Yeah, it'd be like, well, let's riff off the credit thing from earlier. It's like, let's say you're on a group project and then somebody like steps up and takes credit for like the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like it's like they were like leading the project. It's like you weren't leading the project. We were. This was a group. This was a team effort, and so it's like they're
And
creating
you
hierarchy.
did very little.
Yeah. And so it's like creating unnecessary hierarchy. It's like, no, we're all equals here. And you're treating it like it's not that case. I don't know. What are yours? Like, do you have any pet peeves?
Boy, you spurred like a bunch of different thoughts, but I think that all of mine relate to having your time wasted because other people's time is more important than your own.
Mm, yeah.
Uh, I will say I will get to the actual points, but you mentioned uh, the niceties in life. The other day, I was walking up to the door of a building,
Mm-hmm.
and I held the door for this guy to come in. Like he's like kind of lagging behind me, so I held the door for him,
Yeah.
and it's a double door, and like the other double doors, like maybe 10 feet in front, and someone had gone through and it was closing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Another important point: the guy didn't say thank you when I like made extra effort to open it for
Yeah.
him. And he's walking through, and that other door is starting to close. And I was like, okay, so he's gonna grab it for me and let me through.
Yeah.
He did
Nope.
this like James Bond like thing around the door, so he didn't actually touch it. And I was like, what the fuck? I called him an ass. He like slid around it.
See, this is
And he's like now facing me through the glass door, looking at me, and I'm just like mouthing like fucking asshole.
see, this is why the Cole and Scott episodes are the best.
Oh, I was livid. I was even better, even better. So you got to go through like what we'll call an area and go to the elevators, and we both wound up on the same elevator together.
Oh,
And
karmic
I was
justice.
just fucking staring at him. It was great. I loved it. I absolutely
So,
loved it.
was there any contrition, like, from the person? Did they recognize you? Nothing? It was complete, like, sociopath level?
He realized that he had offended the gods or what have you.
Yeah.
He didn't
The
say
natural
anything.
order of things.
He didn't. He felt the weight of my ire, like just the ambiance of it. But like he wanted to get off that elevator so quick. He didn't ever say a word to me. But like this like slithering spy move to like get past the door without actually touching it. Oh
That's
my
just perfect. That's
lord.
classic. You know what that reminds me of? That's like Seinfeld, right? Like, that's definitely
Yeah.
something that would happen on, like,
Absolutely.
a Seinfeld episode.
Absolutely. But that was an unplanned annoyance, and that annoyed me to no end.
Yeah. That's awesome.
The actual annoyances, okay, they're. I mean, you could actually say this for most of these in all drive-through context. People that stop and check their food in the drive-through, like before they actually
Oh,
get going, like especially if
yeah.
they move up like 3/4 of a car length and at the
Mhm.
window, not enough for you to actually get there.
So there is decorum for doing this, because I actually do this, but I pull up far enough,
Yes.
because we've had this, I don't know if it's just me or whatever, but like we've had this like string of issues when you do drive-throughs where they just leave out like half your food.
Yeah.
And so I've like started having to check the bag every time, but again, you have to pull up a reasonable distance so that the people behind you aren't being screwed over by it.
Especially 3/4 length of a car. So like you're no
Yeah.
longer from the window. They can't get to the window. You're gonna have to go inside anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. You got to park,
So
you know.
yeah, I mean, like, so just go ahead, pull up, let life take its course. People that have to get everything set in their car before they actually back out of a spot or get going. So it's like, of course you got to do your seatbelt and this sort of thing, but
Mhm.
gotta get the right radio station going. Gotta like, check the mirrors. Gotta get everything. It's like, no, you're wasting time. Let's
What
get
are
out of
those
here.
people doing? This is one thing I've learned that I do not understand about other humans. Like, what are all the things that you have to do in your car? Like, I literally get in, I turn it on, I pull out. Like, every time. I don't understand this concept. Like, there's people who spend like 15 minutes like just doing stuff. I'm like, what are you doing?
I guess they're like putting in the Google map. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. It's fascinating at a human level, but it's infuriating when you're trying to pull into a spot at like the store or something.
There is a study. I think it's in I think Christakis and Fowler. I think it's in their book where they measured how long it takes someone to pull out if someone is waiting, and it is like an extra like 42 seconds or something like
Yeah.
that. I don't quote me on the actual number, but it is significantly longer than if no one were waiting.
That's so that's like Schadenfreude or something like,
Oh yeah, like I'm just gonna make life hard for these people.
Yeah, that's oh well. That's a little
Uh,
I guess.
and finally, once again, talk about like wasting people's time. Like people that will filibuster you. It's like just go ham on a conversation that you're like, just get to the point. I don't know what you're talking about anymore. You're just
I'm just gonna
rambling.
run out the clock. We
Just
got a 30-minute meeting. I'm definitely talking 28 minutes of this meeting.
I guess that is a strategy, right?
Yeah.
Just never pass the ball to anybody.
No, I had an old boss that did that actually. I think it really was a strategy where they're like, we have a limited amount of time each week. I know you have stuff you want to ask me, so I'm just going to talk the whole time so you can never get to it.
What? That's no way to live, man. Just it'd be like watching like Iowa football. Just like we're never gonna score, but we're never gonna give up any points either.
Good reference, by the way. Well done.
I watch a lot of football. I watch a lot of
Yeah,
football.
absolutely.
Oh no, like there's people that will trap you and like you're like, ah, like move left, move right. No, like or like you try and change the subject and that really pisses them off.
Well, this is not a pet peeve, but I'm curious what your thoughts on this. You ever meet people and they talk too close to your face, right?
Close
Like they get
talkers, yeah.
yeah, close talk, like they just get in uncomfortably close distance and they see it as like a sign of intimacy. I like, what are you doing? Like if I can smell your breath, you're way too close. Like what's going on?
I, I've known people that will like essentially like hover over you. Like you say
Yeah.
you're sitting at your desk and like they will come and put their chin so it's essentially like over your the arching over you, and you're like,
Do you
what?
think it's like a dominance thing? Like are they trying to like you're like, what are they doing?
I will be generous and say that it is not a cognitive process. It's definitely a cognitive process. I will say it's not aware. It's an awareness issue. I don't think
Okay.
that they are aware that they're doing that, but there may be some sort of like oh evolutionary like deep
Yeah. Some gorilla factors going on.
yeah some sort of like deep evolutionary shit going on in their like amygdala.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna like lure over this person to show my dominance.
I'm gonna dominate you.
Dominate.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of pet peeves.
Yeah.
So,
Anyway, that's happy times. Happy times. Happy 2024.
well, I don't know about you, but I've got like 20 different articles to talk to you about today.
The Nerdery.
Do you want to go to that Sackett one though? We were just talking about earlier.
We can talk about it. Like I don't know anything about it,
Well,
or
I think you're,
unless you're talking about Sackett's article.
no. I found one I want to share with you. I
Yeah,
thought
hit me
about
with it.
texting it to you, but I was like, I got Christmas come early for Scott. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure I know who this company PCI XS is, but they have this article titled Sackett et al.'s revised meta-analysis estimate for general cognitive ability and job performance. Much ado about nothing. And so what they go, there's a lot to it, but I'm going to skip to a part where they're saying the case against Sackett et al.'s revised estimates for cognitive ability and job performance. One is that they're showing that there's a high correlation between cognitive ability and educational attainment. And therefore, when you're using educational attainment to select for jobs, you're just getting cognitive
Yeah,
ability.
that makes total
This,
sense.
the second one is a sizable relationship between employment interview performance and general cognitive ability. I think this is the more, I'll call it like damning of the examples, because what Sackett's article is recommending is that structured interviews are actually the most predictive. Well, if there's this sizable relationship between interview performance and cognitive ability, perhaps that's another issue. And then the last, and I think this is the point that you've made a few times, is the complexity of the job that the individual occupies tends to be commensurate with their cognitive ability. That's sometimes called the gravitational hypothesis. And they go into a lot of things, I think, somewhat to sort of just attack Sackett et al., which I don't necessarily agree with. But but their concluding thought, which I do agree with, is cognitive ability remains the single best predictor of overall job performance for medium to high complexity roles. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a little catnip for Scott. So how do you react to this?
Initial reactions is like, yeah, that's exactly what I would expect. But boy, there's so many directions to go. So the earlier points relates to positive manifold, which is dates back to Spearman, created Spearman's G. So that's the general idea that there's an intercorrelation between all the different cognitive tests. So, like if you're good at spelling, you're probably good at mathematics, which means you're probably good at geography, which good at whatever. Um, which makes total sense. So, like, if you're just like essentially trading one predictor for another, if you're talking about educational attainment, or if you're talking about um, interviews, this sort of thing. Anyway, uh, sorry, I'm like my mind's going like 40 different directions.
No, it's fine,
I,
man.
I think
Let's go
that
through it.
Sackett is absolutely correct for low skill jobs, that we've made those jobs a lot easier. So think about like a
Mhm.
cashier at McDonald's. So it used to be like you had to like type in, I don't know, $1.50 for a burger. Now you just hit a picture of a burger on the thing, right? It's like that's way easier. It's no longer that much skill involved. But I think it also, when you talk about high skill jobs at the top of like say organizations where decisions need to be made, you're going to need judgment, which relates directly to cognitive ability to incorporate various sources of information, dealing with various sorts of personalities. All these sort of things relate to your ability to process information and make sound judgments over time, which is ostensibly the definition of fluid intelligence. That's another like sort of bifurcation we can talk about, whether you're talking about crystallized intelligence or fluid intelligence, i.e., Cattell's sort of model.
Yeah.
But the name of the game is fluid intelligence, and it dictates your ability to walk through a foreign airport and get to your destination. It dictates your ability to take on new information and like incorporate different bits of information and make sound judgments. Uh, there's all sorts of research that shows that if you're in a job that requires more fluid intelligence than you actually have, you will actually slide back in your career down to a job that is more commensurate with your abilities. People with low fluid intelligence are more likely to die because of like they're in accidents, because they make poor judgments, all these sort of things. It all kind of comes together in this fact that yes, intelligence is still important for jobs that require judgment.
Well, my motivation for this was just one of the things I've seen. I think Sackett's research is probably some of the most important that's happened over the last 10 or 20
Mm-hmm.
years. But there's been an overreaction to it, and the article talked about that there's folks that are calling that cognitive ability like should play no role, or it plays no role in selection systems as a
Yeah.
result of the research. And I was like, that's a complete misinterpretation of what he found.
Yes,
And so I think
absolutely.
it's important that when you're doing science, that you call balls and strikes and say like, yeah, his research is really important, and it does kind of turn some things on their head, especially about concurrent validity studies versus predictive studies. But what it doesn't do is say that there's no role for cognitive ability, especially into medium and complex jobs. And so I think you and I are kind of on the same page with this.
Yeah, and like once again, like Saget did a great thing by first like pointing out that the methods were flawed in the original research, but two, also incorporating intelligence data that isn't from the 1950s. Like we got this data laying around. We can update these sort of data points, and three, sparking discussion about these sort of things. So it's great to revisit the Schmidt and Hunter, not just necessarily hold it up, or any research. I'll make a broader point. Not any research is without the ability to pick it apart and uh, try to find a better model.
Absolutely. But do you want to stick on the vein of cognitive ability for a second?
Sure.
I thought this was fascinating. This is actually something I sent to you a while back that we never got a chance to cover. Um, some research from some folks at Carnegie Mellon, I believe.
I like this where like Cole's bringing research to me. It's usually the other way around.
I know I got some chops,
You
man.
you got your you got your you got your shit.
But it was in the journal Science, which again is very, actually I think the most preeminent publication out there. But it's evidence for collective intelligence factor in the performance of human groups. So what they found is that cognitive ability has usually been thought of as a individual factor, but
Mm-hmm.
they actually found the evidence, pretty strong evidence, for a term called collective intelligence, which reflects how well groups perform, even when you control for things like the diversity of the group. And I thought this was fascinating in terms of, you know, like if you're really wanting to have strong team performance or strong departmental performance or strong organizational performance, that there is such a thing as collective intelligence and that it does play a role to the performance outcomes of such as they found for income and academic achievement, which I thought was very interesting. So I don't know. I thought you would find this one interesting as well.
That is interesting. So by collective intelligence, I assume that they're talking about knowledge sharing between teams or within teams, rather, right?
Yeah,
I,
I think they're actually aggregating kind of the individual intelligences of each member of the team.
well, I mean, that's if you get to like
And I may be
team.
misinterpreting it, but that's I thought what they did.
No, I totally get it. Boy, that's an interesting question as well that comes up when if you ever start dealing with like teams research, like
Well,
okay, so
they
here's
actually
a team.
look at it in three ways. They have this collective intelligence, they have average member intelligence, and then maximum member intelligence.
Yeah, this is where I was going to go as far as how do you actually aggregate these sort of teams and what they're trying to get to. So, is it the average level across different groups? Like say, forget
Mhm.
intelligence. Say we're talking about like sentiment of their manager. Like, are we have an overall average job and satisfaction, or is it in certain cases like the maximum ability is exactly what you need for team performance, right? uh, Everyone relies on the good enough. Like I guess if you like a golf round and you just take the best to the hole, something like that. That'd be essentially example of collective maximal team
Yeah, sort
performance.
of. Yeah, it's like a scramble. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I really don't understand what they mean by this sort of collective intelligence if those two things are off the table at this
I think
point.
you aggregate everybody's intelligence together is what they're
Just sum
doing.
it together,
Yeah.
the overall sum.
Mhm.
I guess if you use like average, you would like take into account the number of people on the team as opposed to.
Yeah.
Uh, my mind immediately goes to what is the purpose of the group and what are they trying to achieve from an outcome. So,
Mhm.
from like a network perspective, you often think of like diverse opinions as a good thing, you know,
Mhm.
and it is great for arriving at a correct decision. So we take in all these different factors and you know, echo chambers can be burst apart because we take into account different perspectives and people can like rip these apart, etc. But it's really slow. It takes a while for
Mhm.
people to battle it out. If you really want to get something done but don't necessarily care if it's right, or you want to be right enough, you want it done now, you need like a homogenous group, a group that has severe group think. They've worked together before, they don't want any new ideas, we're just going to work together and get it done. So I mean, like, there's all sorts of different factors to what teams are, how to aggregate it, and what they're trying to achieve.
This is clearly your first time talking about this, so,
Other than
yeah.
that, I have no opinions.
Absolutely. Well, do you have anything that you wanna cover? Otherwise, I've got some more catnip for you.
I got a lot of things too, but here I'll just we
Let's hit
love
on some, man.
we love giving back. We love giving back. Let's see if I actually have this up for here. I'll just read it to you. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
So this paper identifies the ideal study regimen for exams, right? And the study regimen that they propose, or it shows the best overall results, is one, study before bed,
Okay.
two, sleep,
Yeah.
and three, do a short review when you wake up.
That sounds fantastic.
Long
I
term retention increased by 50%. It took less time overall doing that, which it flies in the face of
cramming.
cramming. I'm going to study all night. No, it's
Yep.
bullshit.
Not working.
Never
You didn't
works.
get the good sleep, you didn't review in the morning, you didn't give your brain a chance to put it into long-term memory. Absolutely.
I will
Which
say,
does call into question the value of a college degree if every exam you had in college you crammed for, and therefore none of it was converted into long-term memory, did you actually get any value from this experience?
I mean, like, what is the value of a college degree? It's essentially to show that you can show up to the same place 4 years in a row. You can perform reasonably well. You can get your work done on time and have enough wherewithal to complete it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully you learned something.
And
But
that's secondary.
yeah.
That was always the question. Like, oh, they're going to teach you what they want you to know on the job anyway.
So I've got some more for you. It's sort of on the vein of
Were you a crammer? Did you cram?
not really. I mean, I don't know how to say. Like, I definitely didn't follow what you just described, but I had my own kind of method.
Yeah.
So I just like when I was reading before class, I would highlight everything,
Okay.
right? And then I'd cover that in the class, and then before the test, I would just read through for like 2 days. I just read through everything I highlighted, right?
Yeah.
Like 2 or 3 times, and then I take the test, and so I guess
because you're
there was a
cold.
little bit of like repetition involved. I generally tried to get good sleep, I guess you could say, but I never did like the last minute reviews or really that much cramming unless I just was in a bad place or something. What about you?
You know what really worked for me during comps, where I think it was like 425 citations that I dug up, something like that. I had sticky notes all over my
Yeah.
house. I think I've talked the method of loci. Some people call
Yeah.
it memory theater.
I was
Yeah.
thinking like undergrad, not like comprehensive reviews.
Oh, undergrad, that's a different ball game. If I could go back to undergrad now, I would dominate. I would absolutely dominate.
Yeah, like
I'd be a Rhodes
undergrad,
Scholar.
I don't want to say like, because I mean, again, I did just go to Louisiana Tech. I didn't go like, some Ivy League institution or something, but
They got the same books there.
yeah, I got the same books. So, yeah, it wasn't that hard, It's just not as hard as people like. I remember being in high school and we had these teachers and they'd be like, "Oh my God, when you get to college, it's going to be so hard." And I was like, "It was not."
It just means that now I can skip class and no one bugs me about skipping class.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've got an interesting one. Do you mind if I take the ball for a second?
Oh, you're gonna do something interesting. Okay, I see how
Yeah.
it is.
Well, so this past week, Spotify announced some layoffs, and I think they actually got a lot of like positive publicity about ethically how you would do a layoff effectively, because people were like, they were very generous, I guess. But buried within their layoff announcement, there was this. I guess they had found by most metrics we were more productive but less efficient. And
Yeah.
what he's talking about, the CEO, is that Spotify was one of these trailblazers for remote work. And what they were finding is by a lot of these metrics, they were doing more work
Yeah.
rather than contributing to other opportunities with real impact. And so like the basically what they're saying is their productivity went up, but the quality of their output was going down related to their work. And I thought this was fascinating. First of all, because what we've talked about before of how difficult it is to measure productivity and measure the impact of that productivity. But second of all, I guess they have some sort of metrics that are showing that, yeah, you are more productive when you work from home, which we've heard 1,000 times. Oh, I'm more productive when I work from home. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're making a real impact with that productivity, which I hadn't heard this before.
Yeah, this has been the concern since the start of the pandemic, when people said, like, I can go home, I can write papers, I can make my PowerPoint decks, I have fewer interruptions, I'm producing all this work, but what does it mean in the end if you're just like pushing paper, really, if you're not moving the bottom line? And this is where like the collaborative aspects of coming to the office and people bouncing ideas off of each other, that's where it really comes back. And that's really, really fascinating. I actually thought you were going to go a different direction with this, but
No, I mean, what direction would that be?
well, you said ethical layoffs. And I saw this like TikTok of an organization doing mass Zoom layoffs. They get like 60 people
Mhm.
on the call, like, hey, everyone on this call, like, yeah, you don't work here anymore as of right now.
Yeah, there's been a lot of that over the
See y'all
last 2
later.
years. Good luck, you know?
I mean, once again, like just because you are doing great at the house and you're killing it as far as like producing.
Well, do you mind if I reframe it a little bit?
Sure, go for it.
Like, and I think this makes logical sense. It's like at a complex, or we've talked about complexity before and how an organization is a complex system, and you really, it takes all the different factors to make the outcomes occur for the organization.
Yeah.
Do you think that if you as an individual are the only one performing and you don't need any touch points with other people, all you need to do is to do what you're working on, no collaboration, no idea generation, nothing, that it's actually going to make a massive impact on the organization? Chances are very low that that's the case, because to make an impact, just kind of by definition, in a team-based work environment, it requires connections with other people, not just lone wolf performance.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of a lone inventor out in the wild, like it just doesn't happen. Like you never
Yeah.
really see this sort of thing happen. I will say there are situations, say for engineers, researchers, creative types, where you want them from a network perspective to be on the periphery of the network and not deeply involved
Yeah.
in a series of conversations because they need to work, they need to
Yeah.
function, and they need to actually bounce around. And if you get too close to the center, you're subject to groupthink and all
Mhm.
these sort of motivations that just are antithetical to actually producing your work. So there are situations where you want that, but yes, everyone needs connections to refine their ideas.
See, and this is why I love how your level of expertise in a lot of these spaces, and you can just kind of recall it. Maybe it's your mind palace with all the sticky notes
Mind
that enables
Palace.
you to do that.
I've been
But
watching Sherlock lately, rewatching Sherlock lately. He goes
is
to
it
his
good?
Mind Palace. Oh, it's fantastic.
Okay. Is that the one with Robert Downey Jr., or is this a different one?
Oh no, it's it came out maybe like 10 years ago on BBC. But
Okay.
yes, they did have a second one. Cumberbatch.
Benedict Cumberbatch,
Yeah,
Cumberbatch, Big Buck. I don't know.
it's only like 9 episodes total. I think it's like 3 seasons of 3 episodes or something like that.
Nice.
Um,
What you
yeah.
got for me?
What I got for you? Have you ever heard of the garbage can model of organizational choice?
I have not. Tell
This
me
is
more.
this is fascinating. So it describes organizational decision making as essentially anarchy, really controlled anarchy. So there's situations where there's like no guidelines, the understanding of technology is unclear, and there's fluid participation in the actual organization as people come in and come out. And so you have this situation where participants, problems, and solutions all come together in sort of a chaotic sort of system. And decisions occur when all three of these meet to finally come up with a solution, but it's not as clear cut as a lot of models would have you believe it is.
Yeah, I like that. It's like what is called the garbage can model.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think when it comes to organizations, you always have competing interests and different, individuals or groups, and it does take an incredible amount of alignment to make something major happen. I don't know if I've ever heard it called anarchy in the organizational context before, but maybe it does fit that definition. I don't know.
It definitely feels like anarchy, especially when you get like in a seriously bureaucratic organization where, like, hey, here's a
I would
problem.
say bureaucratic is the right word, not anarchic. Like I feel like anarchy is the antithesis of bureaucracy.
I don't know. Like when it all comes together, it's like, okay, we got this problem on our hand, and we have a solution, but we got to get weigh in from Bob, and like Sue's got to get her shit together, and we got to wait for Steve, and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, the actual solution gets molded and people's perspectives are taken into account. And like maybe that's bureaucracy right there, stagnation. But the actual output, everything goes into this garbage can situation. Obviously, I think it was developed in like the 70s or something like that, and it never really took off for obvious reasons. People don't like the idea that my model of organizational choice is chaos. That's my orientation to designing the
Maybe
organization.
that's why so many cultures tend towards like consensus driven decision making. It's like how do you have an antidote to the garbage can model of chaos is you just have to have consensus about everything. I don't know.
Oh, collectivistic cultures go into Hofstede dimensions.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But do you mind if I hit you with one more?
Hit me with one more. Hit me with one more. Probably last one.
All right, last one.
Make it good. Make it good, Cole.
It's a good one. I've shared about him a few times. So Vin Vishista makes some pretty decent LinkedIn posts. One pretty recently he put increasing headcount is no longer the most efficient way to improve productivity at organizations. For the next 2 to 3 years, AI will be more significant in productivity driver than hiring. Which he goes on to say further on in the post that that's actually like the first time in history where that'll probably be true is that if an organization wanted to be more productive, they always hired more people. Like
Yeah.
even in like the industrial revolution, you still had to have people that ran the machines or the looms and like a warehouse or something. You still had to
Yeah.
hire more people. And for the first time ever, you'll potentially see more productivity without additional hiring or maybe even, layoffs and things like that. And so I thought that was fascinating that we are at this juncture in history where that might be the case. And I don't know why he says the next 2 to 3 years. I mean, presumably you would see that trend continue into the future.
Um. Everything's cyclical.
Mm-hmm.
What did Matthew McConaughey say? Like life is a flat disc, and we're just spinning on it.
That was very Austin of you.
I think he was in not True Blood, True Detective, True Crime,
True Detective. Yeah,
True
we talked about
Detective.
this before. Yeah.
But yeah, everything is cyclical. So like this is the advent of like the Luddites who would essentially they saw the new machinery coming into town and like they would bust it up because they thought it was going to take their jobs and under penalty of death in England. But I think that AI is going to not only take jobs away but also spur new sort of jobs.
Yeah, I know we've covered that territory a lot before. I just thought that the fascinating thing here that we, as a society, we've never experienced this. We've never experienced the time, and so we actually don't know what the outcome will be because we can't look back into some historical example. Like basically, like all of our economic models and all of our historical like models of development of society are based on, you know, especially at least in capitalistic societies, more people working and that being kind of a universal benefit to society. I think we just don't know what this is going to do. And I don't know. I just don't hear enough appreciation of that.
I don't think I understand because I think that we do, or if history is a guide, that
Mm-hmm.
if jobs are taken away by a technology, then they're essentially new jobs are created in their place. Think about like the advent of like the automatic telephone interchange system. Like there used to be
Mm-hmm.
like tons of people that would just like, hey, who you calling? You calling Cole? Like, I mean, plug you in there, and like they all went away, but they were replaced by other sort of jobs doing things. I get it. We don't know. I mean, but prediction's the
Yeah.
name of the game. Um,
Yeah. I don't know. I've just been thinking about this more lately of just, we talked about AI a lot on here. I'm kind of almost to the point where I'm bored talking about
yeah,
AI.
I get that.
But one of the things that I'm trying to do more recently, instead of like trying to make prognostications about the future, which again, your guess is as good as mine, is just using logic. And to try to assess this out. And if the logic is true in this, because it may not be true. What if, AI actually doesn't make us more productive? Like that's also a possibility. We just don't really know. But if it does, and we haven't encountered this before, what impacts does that have? I think again, I think it's just unknown. I really am kind of falling into that camp more and more as time progresses.
Yes, yes, and I think that the technology is the worst it's ever going to be, and we've heard from other people that we've had on say essentially things like, I asked to do something and I had to ask it 10 times to do something, then I threw my hands up in the air and just did it myself anyway, just because it
Yep.
wasn't doing what I wanted to do. In that case, is it benefiting your productivity? No, clearly, all right.
It's got to get better. That's
It's got to get better. It will get better, but I mean, there's still like room for human judging. I gotta think. I gotta hope. Otherwise, I welcome our robot overlords to do whatever they're gonna do.
I don't know. I think, I guess where I'm going with it, like imagine a scenario where, like Google used to have, I don't know, 10,000 people and it made a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then it grew to like 150,000 people and it still made a lot of money, but it wasn't that much more money. But to get that additional money, they always hired more people. Imagine if Google never got past 10,000 people and they kept making more and more money, right? And there's productivity plateau, or their hiring just plateaued. So it's not saying that they never hire another person. It's just saying all the additional gains came from AI, not more hiring.
Oh, I think that I don't know if we're like beating the same point to the death. I think that technology will always replace workers, but there's gonna be other room for it.
Yeah, fair enough, dude. This has been fun, and let's have another good 2024 with the pod. Maybe we'll make it another 6 months. Maybe we won't. Who knows? Yeah,
we'll come up with new pet peeves at some point. Definitely.
Exactly. All right, man. Well, I really appreciate you, and I think this has been a lot of fun. So thanks for doing this with me, man.
Happy 2023. On to 2024.
Absolutely. All right. Well, you've been listening to Directionally Correct, the People Analytics podcast with Cole and Scott, and today's guest, nobody.
All opinions are our own and do not reflect those of any other organization. You've been listening to Directionally Correct, a People Analytics podcast with Cole and Scott.